So, you must be the youngling sent to be my replacement after my retirement. If you're wanting to be serving in this household for as long as I have, you'd start by making sure to be presentable at all times to the members of this household. I have served this family for 2 generations, and if you wish to take my place as majordomo of this house, you will need to learn to serve. To serve is to be loyal, and to be loyal is to know whom you are serving. So I shall instruct you on the inner workings of this house and the nobility, so that you would not embarrass yourself in serving this long-standing institution of Waterdeepian life. Waterdeep's nobility began in the year of the cockatrice, when Open Lord Agaron made nearly 100 families from the merchant gentry the first noble families of the city. While some families could trace their genealogy back to hundreds of years, this household was one of the last families to have been granted nobility. Not that the age of a family's nobility sets some kind of precedent among the noble families, it merely serves as a benchmark of how successful a given family has been at working with the lords, the guilds, and the changes in the growing City of Splendors. What's that? Yes. Some of these families had noble titles from where they came from, like Cormier, but there are no ranks or precedents among the new nobles. They would occupy a special position in Waterdeep, above the commoners, below the lords. Today, there are 78 noble family lines left in the city, and you would do well to remember their names by heart. As nobles, they are granted several privileges in the city. Aside from being protected by the foremost plaint in the Code Legal, nobles are granted the right to protect themselves through arms. This also applies to the up to 70 men-at-arms the noble may have under their service, who wear the noble's Arms of Grace, a coat of arms borne by every soldier and low-ranking servant of the noble's household. While more important than your average Waterdeepian citizen, the nobility is subservient to the lords. In the presence of the lords, however, a noble can only speak whenever they are recognized by the Open Lord or pointed to by one of the masked lords. These rights are given, not just as a formality, but in return for their contributions and the role the nobles play in fostering this city, which includes a special tax that the nobles have to pay. While marriage is the most common and easiest way for one to enter the nobility, some prefer to be ennobled without marriage. This is done by petition to the Lords of Waterdeep. Although the Lords of Waterdeep have never spelled out the strict criteria for granting such petitions, those that succeeded have a few things in common. Are you listening? First, the individual must demonstrate a vast personal wealth, usually in excess of 25,000 dragons. It is preferable that such wealth was generated by benefiting Waterdeepians through job creation, rather than some random adventurer claiming that wealth from a dragon's hoard. Apart from being a long-term resident in Waterdeep who only leaves the city during the winter or when leading trade expeditions, they should also own several significant properties in the city. Socially, the individual should have a prominent role in one or more guilds. Lastly, the petition should be sponsored by at least 5 noble houses. This is often the most important criterion for the success of a petition, and requires a staggering amount of wealth, connections, debts, charitable giving, bribes, and humility to convince that it is in the best interest of these noble houses to have the individual added to the nobility. It is also worth noting that, officially, all the noble families of Waterdeep are humans, although some are rumored to have the blood of dragons, elves, devils, and yuan-tis running in them. There isn't any point in confirming those rumors, lest you might insult them unknowingly. In any case, they have a habit of keeping the nobility pure, so petitions of those who do not carry any human blood is unlikely to gain any support from the other houses. Anyway, these were the methods used by the Full and Zolper families. By securing an insurmountable amount of wealth, buying up most of the north and seawards, and having several noble families indebted to them, and some even say a few of the masked lords, their ennoblement seemed almost destined. No new noble families, however, have been ennobled by the lords since the year of the Snow Winds, or found success using the same methods since. There was an exception when Lord Neverember was Open Lord. Then the titles were openly traded. But Open Lord Laerol Silverhand put a stop to that, and restored the nobility to its former roots. To maintain their presence in the city, most noble families have more than a dozen members residing in the city at all times, while others could be living out in estates and holdings from Om to Sembia. Those within the city are served by a household staff of typically 50 servants, like ourselves, and every member of a noble family is afforded their own mount. Each family is headed by a patriarch or matriarch, which is not uncommon in Waterdeep. Matriarchs who marry another nobleman may choose to marry into his family, or have the man marry into her family. Whatever way this happens, one side is taken into the other and must forfeit all rights of inheritance to their previous house. Some would say this prevents the merging of powers and promotes stability among all the houses. Customarily, it is assumed that the eldest child, regardless of their gender, inherits the majority holdings of a family, with smaller portions divided among the younger siblings and distant relatives. Though rare, the heads of a family can designate a different heir, but such proclamations must be made in the Lord's court to legitimize the heir's claim in the eyes of the Lords, and avoid any disputes of inheritance. In the rare case that there is no heir on their abdication of their family names, it is possible for both houses to be joined to form a new house. This happened with the Merclos when the matriarch of the Marek family married someone from the Relikos clan, combining their name and properties. The lords used this tactic to prevent the end of a noble line, rather than the nobles having their marriages arranged hastily to keep the number of noble families steady. But even the best efforts of the lords cannot prevent all the deaths of a noble house, such as was the case with House Deepwinter and Mernos. Apart from the 4 recorded houses that have died out, the lords have only officially stripped 2 other houses of their nobility. House Gildech and Zoar were not only removed from the nobility, but also exiled from the city for their part in the bloody reign at the end of the Guild War. Then there are the houses which are not currently living in Waterdeep, but are believed to be surviving. When the Shadow Dusks were rumored to have been taken over by aberrations, their family mansion was burned to the ground in the Year of the Harp. Since then, no one has returned to Waterdeep to claim the Shadow Dusks' estate, although there are known relatives in other parts of Faerûn. No, you may not eat that. I am nearly done, you obstreperous ragamuffin. The average citizen may see the nobles as little more than depraved Waterdavians, who spend their coin on lavish celebrations, contests in the fields of triumph, and never-ending parties. But those fools do not recognize the important role that nobles play in the lives of Waterdavians, and the city as a whole. The nobles in Waterdeep are patrons and investors in all manners of businesses in the city, as well as the arts, whose patronage is highly sought after by many a starving artist or enterprising merchant. Much of the splendor the city is known for in the north is only made possible by the coin of the nobility. Oh, I hear the master's carriage is rolling in. Help me straighten up these clothes before we greet him.